The rain had stopped, but the palace still shone wet when Helena lifted the veil of dust from the cracked statue. The marble, wounded by years of neglect, seemed to ask for help. Behind her, steady footsteps. Raphael, the man newspapers called the last impossible heir, watched her with storm-colored eyes. "Can you save it before the inauguration?" he asked, while cameras and invitations flew across the city like birds. That night, they forged an unlikely contract to save the marble garden and perhaps their own scars. The glittering world of salons, winter gardens, and secrets whispered on balconies would witness an alliance born technical and ending as something dangerously like love. A small request before we begin. Leave your city in the comments below. It reminds me that stories have no borders, and neither does the longing for something honest and true. Wherever you are, you belong here. Now, let the story unfold. Water still slid from the parapets of Viamonte Palace when Helena crossed the inner courtyard, the metallic smell of rain mixing with the breath of old stone. Santa Aurelia, a coastal city carved from terraces and domes, had a habit of turning any arrival into cinema. That morning, the clouds parted like curtains. She had come with 2 suitcases, a pigment kit guarded like jewels, and a courage she pretended was larger than it was. She did not speak it aloud, but the last project she had signed in Sao Paulo had ended in headlines. A diverted piece, a curator ex-fiancé, a betrayal that mixed life and work the way the wrong solvent mixes with varnish. She tendered her resignation to the museum and quietly accepted the invitation to Santa Aurelia. 2 months, she promised herself, just 2 months to save the marble garden, then disappear to some studio with big windows. It was a pact with her own exhaustion. A palace guide led her down long corridors where ancestor portraits watched like judges. "The Count is waiting, Miss Helena." The title still sounded exotic, almost theatrical, but everything in this city had a stage's echo. The Marble Garden, an ensemble of 19th century neoclassical sculptures, arranged in a semicircle before a reflecting pool, was scheduled to reopen after decades. The previous week's storm had exposed fissures, iron blooms, and displaced joints. The press whispered that the inauguration would be delayed. City Hall pressed, sponsors called. In the middle of it all, an heir who disliked interviews. He stood by the window, dark coat open, when she entered the salon. He was not handsome like in the magazines. He was interesting like a well-posed problem. A precise line in him seemed to carry invisible weight, just as the palace columns did. "Ms. Helena is fine," she said, offering a hand. "Helena, then." He did not smile, but his voice softened by a fraction. "We need precision and delicacy. The garden is memory that has not yet fallen into ruin," she finished. "I saw the photographs. I can start today." Raphael nodded. The guide left. They remained, held at a distance measured by tapestries and quiet. "The papers are hungry," he said at last. "I do not enjoy feeding hunger. I feed stone," she replied, "and when I can, hope." She chose not to think about the double meaning. She stepped to the first statue, a nymph leaning on a jar. The crack ran from shoulder to chest like a dry lightning bolt. Helena removed her gloves and touched the surface with her fingertip, learning the grain. Carrara. The palace did have gold fingers after all. She opened her case. Pencils, scalpels, spatulas, swabs, samples of lime putty and resins. She laid the instruments out like she was introducing old friends. "The storm was only the trigger," she diagnosed. "The damage is older. Poor drainage did the rest." "Will you fix it?" He said fix in a way that did not admit maybe. "I will, but I'll need a small team, prompt pay, and no one touching anything without permission. No one will lay a hand on the garden without your authorization," he said. "A matter of honor." Honor, she almost laughed. Men of honor lie too. She had learned the hard way, but this one seemed more inclined to silence than invention. He handed her an envelope. "The contract, 2 months. Bonus if we open on time. The city..." He searched for a word that wasn't melodrama. "The city needs a happy ending." The pen was heavy in her hand, but she signed, not for the bonus and not for the hero in a dark coat, but for the marble, always for the marble. The first days were choreography. She and 2 assistants breathed fine dust, discussed microfissures, tested injections of hydrated lime, removed old mortars as if undoing stitches from ancient surgery. Each afternoon the rain returned, and the garden smelled of wet earth and calcite. Raphael arrived punctually at dusk after sponsor and political meetings, bringing data, deadlines, and sometimes coffee. He watched a great deal and spoke little. When he spoke, he was precise. The anonymous 19th century sculptor had an obsession with hands, Helena said one evening, cleaning a satyr's fingers with delicate swabs. It's where he puts tenderness, and where you find the most fragile part, he answered, crouching beside her. The weight runs through there. Exactly. She surprised herself by smiling. It's beautiful when someone understands a structure. Word spread. Society columns photographed the restoration like a fashion show. The Brazilian of the stones became a headline. Blogs called Raphael the reclusive count, finally involved in public life. Rumors of a romance were born before any gesture warranted gossip. Helena tried to keep her distance, from dinners, from looks, but the logic of salons was centripetal. And there was, she admitted despite herself, a misty kindness in Raphael's way of not crossing her boundaries, while somehow making sure a coat was offered when the wind rose off the bay. One night, the generator failed. Lights went dark. The garden a half-world lit by improvised lanterns. The pool returned constellations. With a lamp clipped to her shoulder and a hemostat between her fingers, Helena worked at the joint of two fragments when a dry crack split the air. "Stay behind me," Raphael said on instinct, stepping forward. "It's just metal dilating," she laughed, still focused on the lime stitch. "Sometimes the stone speaks. It's not a threat. It's memory." "What does it say?" It sounded like a joke, but there was real curiosity. "It says it doesn't want to be a trophy. It wants to be alive. Living stone is the kind we listen to. In that warm dark, amidst the sounds of materials adjusting and the smell of fresh adhesive, something shifted. There was no touch, no promise, only a mutual recognition that they were, each in their own way, repairing what time had broken. When the lights returned, Helena packed her tools and for the first time accepted dinner at the palace. The table was smaller than legend suggested, set in a winter garden with a jar of lemons and basil branches perfuming the air. They spoke of restoration, of winds that peel facades, of a city that manufactures myths like pigeons in squares. He told her of his mother, who opened the library to the public when everyone said it was a waste of time. She spoke of her Bahian grandmother, who taught her to polish wood as if it were a prayer. "And São Paulo?" he asked carefully. "It's a love that turned its back on me," she said. "So I turned mine on it." Honesty settled between them like a third glass of wine. Raphael asked no more. Sometimes the right question is the one not asked. The next morning, City Hall announced the date. 6 weeks. Less than comfortable. The team doubled its breath. Deadlines have a way of summoning accidents. One arrived in human form. A man in a pale blazer and advertisement smile stepped into the sight. "Lucas," he said without ceremony, like a hand that opens an old door without knocking. "I'm here, Helena, covering this marvel for the culture column, and of course to kill the nostalgia." Raphael, a few steps away, stopped. He did not intervene. He observed, as if measuring wind in a sail. "We don't have spare credentials today," Helena said, firm. "And nostalgia is not a priority on the schedule. Always direct." Lucas's smile did not move, but the public loves behind the scenes, especially when there's chemistry. Helena felt the old nausea, that mix of work and intrusion. She held the tool like a helm. Raphael approached with glacial courtesy. "The garden is closed to the press until the week of the opening," he informed. "If needed, my staff can provide official images. Ms. Helena runs this site." Lucas raised his hands in friendly surrender, but his eyes carried messages. He left Cologne in his wake and a shadow of complication. Later, alone by the nymph with the jar, Helena allowed herself to tremble. The past always finds a gap. No matter. She had promised the statues and herself that she would not abandon the work until water could be heard running again. When she looked up, she found Raphael waiting a few meters away, not intruding. He offered a silent coffee. She accepted, grateful. "Let's finish," she said to the stone more than to him. "Let's," he confirmed, and that let's sealed a partnership with the perfect silhouette, professional, respectful, attentive. The rest, the thing the city was trying to name ahead of time, would come later. For now, the anonymous sculptor's hands and Helena's would tell in unison the story of a first hairline that was not the end, but the beginning. Mornings began with ritual. Helena arrived before sunlight reached the mosaic courtyard, switched on the dehumidifiers, read the salt maps, and noted tiny shifts in the pool's conductivity. Precision kept her safe. Numbers do not gossip. Numbers hold. Raphael alternated his visits. Sometimes he brought reports, Sometimes flowers from the market, camellias his mother loved, for the winter garden. He said flowers reminded him that even marble needs a living contrast. 3 days after Lucas's visit, the papers ran a small note. Ex-couple in the arts reunites in Santa Aurelia. No photo, just malice. Helena breathed through it and called the palace press office. Her request was simple: decline to comment. Noise dies when it finds no wall to bounce off. Work required a different music. Chiara, Helena's right hand, carried in a portable spectrophotometer. Together they calibrated an invisible palette of whites and shadows, searching for the place where intervention disappears and time returns to its rightful seat. Good restoration gives back what once was, without inventing what never existed, Helena repeated, a mantra that steadied her hands. From the doorway, Raphael listened to a world that was not his and made mental notes anyway. He began to understand the garden's 3 clocks. There was the time of stone, slow; the time of politics, impatient; the time of the city, volatile. Success would mean making all 3 meet on the day of the reopening, as if life had rehearsed. "We have a demand from the main sponsor," he said one afternoon, stepping into the site with care. "They want a small stage near the pool for a string quartet." Helena looked up, measuring angles in her head. "If the stage is too heavy, vibrations. If it vibrates, more cracks." "That was my fear," he said, relieved to hear her speak it. "I can negotiate a floating platform with rubber dampers, and a no-amplification rehearsal the night before. Marble is not fond of decibels." He allowed himself a brief smile and took notes. Their conversations had become a shared language, his of protocols and alliances, hers of pH and layers. Between the two, trust grew like moss catching morning light. That night, the first social event pushed them into the main hall. City Hall was hosting a dinner to stitch discreet support. The invitation was signed by the mayor. Attendance was strongly encouraged. Helena, who preferred aprons to dresses, nearly refused. Chiara insisted. "The city must see you as the garden's guardian," she added with mischief, "and the Count is not the only one who brings beauty to a room." Silk rustled, laughter chimed. Columns of gossip rose between glasses. Helena pinned her hair into a simple bun and wore a navy dress that made her look like deep water. She arrived with Chiara and the site inspector, practiced in the choreography of handshakes and standard phrases. Raphael appeared minutes later, immaculate, and a small wave moved across the room, the way it does when someone with a story enters without warning. "Thank you for coming," he said, stopping before her with a respect that erased distances. "If you need to escape, the Winter Garden always has space." "I'm relieved to know even nobles flee dinners," she said, amused. They circulated together until a too-smiling businessman stepped into their path. "Count, I hear the restorer has a fiery ex. Imagine the buzz if—" Raphael did not let him finish. He met the man's eyes with armed courtesy. "The marble garden is the protagonist. The rest is noise." The man laughed, wounded behind the eyes, and retreated. Helena understood then that Raphael's protection was not possessive, it was functional. He protected the project, and by doing so, protected her work. The simple act reorganized parts of her that had been misaligned since São Paulo. Later, on the balcony over the sea, they mapped the next 3 weeks. Full microfissure survey, replacement of corroded internal clamps, final polishing only where strictly necessary. "The beauty of wear," she said. "I don't want to erase time, I want to heal what hurts." "Does that work for people too?" he asked, watching the horizon draw its black line. "It does," she said, surprised by how quickly the answer came. "As long as the person wants to be healed." The breeze carried salt. Music from the hall softened. For a moment, they seemed outside the pages the city turned so hungrily. 2 people, bringing their methods to a shared horizon. The following week, Helena found an anomaly. A satyr's support showed advanced corrosion that did not match the original report. Someone, during a previous renovation, had swapped noble materials for cheap ones and disguised the fault. It explained the subtle oscillations. She documented everything, photographed it, sent a report to Raphael. Within the hour, he was on site, sleeves pushed up. "We're going to cut and rebuild," she said, "but I need freedom to choose the supplier, and a full day without visitors." "Agreed." He took a breath that sounded like budgets being recalculated. "If City Hall complains, I'll carry it." "Thank you." "Don't thank me for doing the minimum," he said. "I should be thanking you for not accepting patches." Raphael suspended social agendas for 48 hours. The palace quieted like an animal that knows when to heal. The team worked in shifts, tuned like an orchestra. By dawn of the second day, the new support was seated, exact. Exhausted, Helena pressed her forehead to the cool marble, a silent prayer. When she looked up, first light turned surfaces to silver. Raphael stood at a distance, hands in his pockets, discreetly undone. "What do you say when you finish a stage like this?" he asked. "I say, thank you for trusting me," she answered, unguarded. He nodded. As if an unseen chord resolved, he stepped one measure closer than protocol would recommend. Not enough to touch, enough to register. 2 days later, Lucas published a column implying sponsors were hostages to the restorer's perfectionism. The word perfectionism was a knife wrapped in silk. Helena, who had learned to tell criticism from poison, closed her browser. The answer would be in the work, perhaps too in a gesture that did not have to be hers. It came at the local press briefing. In front of microphones, Raphael spoke about timelines, transparency, and technical standards. "When it comes to heritage," he said, "perfectionism is another name for responsibility." He named Helena as lead decision-maker on site. He framed her criteria as the project's law. The sentence traveled through Santa Aurelia in less than an hour, settling into conversations like a pebble dropped into a still bowl. That evening, Helena returned to the garden after everyone had left. She stood before the nymph with the jar and listened. The pool whispered. Somewhere in the palace, a clock chimed the half-hour. In the reflection, she saw herself small among larger shapes, statues, columns, doors, and felt, for the first time in months, properly sized, not diminished, fitted. Raphael approached without startling her. "We'll need to confirm the quartet set list," he said, almost as if it were a code for "Are you all right?" "We'll mark the BPM limit on the plan," she said, taking it as the code it was. He hesitated, then added, "The city will keep talking, let it. The garden will answer." "It already does," she said. They stood side by side in a listening silence. It did not feel like waiting. It felt like keeping faith. The winter garden had always been the quietest part of the palace. Raphael's mother had filled it with citrus trees, a stubborn domestic antidote to the city's grand appetite for ceremony. Under the glass roof, lemons grew beside camellias. In summer, basil took over the air. Raphael found himself there the morning the sponsors insisted on moving the gala from the municipal theatre to the palace itself. "Proximity breeds generosity," the main donor had said over the phone. What he meant was, "I want the statues in every photograph." Raphael knew why Helena would object. He objected too, but money had its own clock, and it was ticking. He asked Helena to meet in the winter garden rather than the site. She arrived with her hair up, sleeves rolled. Her presence had changed the way the palace felt, as if her carefulness had been contagious. Even the footman moved softer. "Tell me the bad news," she said, reading him well. "They want the gala here," he said. "In the great hall, guests will want to spill into the garden, which will spill vibration into the statues," she answered, "and body heat, and moisture." She did not raise her voice. She rarely did. The firmness lived in her verbs. "I can zone it," he said. "We can design an invisible line. Guests in the hall, sight lines to the garden, but no foot in the gravel, lighting from afar. The quartet on the floating stage, and security that behaves like air, not like a shove. I'll choose them myself." She walked to the lemon tree and rolled a fruit between her fingers, thinking, "I do not want to be the cliché of the difficult expert, but there is more at risk here than a launch." "I know," he meant it, "and I will say so." She placed the lemon back in its leaf cradle, a small act of respect that did something to him he did not have a name for. "All right," she said. "We draw the line. We test it during rehearsal." They moved to the hall. With masking tape, chalk, and a patience that looked like art, Helena and Chiara drew the path for the gala's currents, the places where seeing would be allowed and touching would not. Raphael stood with the head of security and the lighting designer, translating Helena's criteria into the language of logistics. It was not performative. It was, he realized, partnership. By afternoon, the quartet arrived to test the floating platform. The first notes rose clean and surprisingly gentle. Helena stood at the edge of the pool, hand on her notebook, listening to the statues listen. She felt the music nowhere specific and everywhere at once, between shoulder and neck, at the bridge of her nose where focus aches. Lucas came back. He had credentials this time and a camera crew. "B-roll," he said lightly. "The public is starving." Raphael started to refuse, but Helena lifted a hand. "Let them shoot from the hall," she said. "If the camera does not cross the line, it can look all it wants." Lucas bowed as if she had granted a wish. He stayed well back, lens glinting. For the first time, Helena sensed he had not come to sabotage. Curiosity had its own hunger. During a pause, the first violinist approached Helena. "We are used to being the diva," the woman said with a shy smile. "But here we are learning to be the frame. That is the highest art," Helena said, "to hold and not steal the eye." Rehearsal ended without a single tremor registered on Helena's senses. The platform had worked, the line held. Raphael felt something loosen in his chest, that tight knot of political practicality that had lived there since he inherited responsibilities he had not asked for. When the musicians left, when the camera crew packed up, when the footman closed doors, he and Helena stood at the tape with its invisible meaning and did not step over. "I was 19 when I decided I would never host a gala," he said, surprising himself. "And yet," she said, equally surprised. "And yet," he laughed softly, a sound that existed mostly in his eyes. "My mother said, refusal is a tool to be used rarely or it loses its edge." She was right. Helena looked at the statues, then at him. But agreement is also a tool. When we say yes to the right line. He wanted to tell her that he was trying to learn the difference. He wanted to say that she made it easier to see. He said instead, "I'm glad you're here." She did not look away. "Me too." The near confession hung between them, soft as basil in warm air. Neither reached for it. Not yet. The following day, an unexpected ally revealed herself. Donna Beatrice, an elderly sculptor whose own work had once been dismissed as too domestic, asked to visit the site. She walked slowly, cane tapping a rhythm that did not hurry anyone. She stood before the satyr and put her palm near, not touching, as if warming her old bones on the statue's residual cold. "This is not about purity," she said to Helena, voice like paper. "It is about the right to age." Helena swallowed the answering heat in her chest. "Yes," she said, "that is exactly it." Beatrice turned her paper voice to Raphael. "Listen to her. Make the rich listen too." "I am trying," he said. "Try harder." Beatrice smiled to show it was a blessing, not a scold. That night, Lucas published a different kind of column. He still wanted clicks, but the angle shifted. "In Santa Aurelia," he wrote, "a garden is being taught the difference between spectacle and care." He named Helena and her rules. He quoted Raphael's protagonist line. For once, the comments were kinder than the headline. Helena read it on her phone in the winter garden, the air thick with basil. Raphael sat across from her with a stack of seating charts no one would remember in a week. She held up the screen for him to see, then set it down. "Maybe the city is listening," she said. "Maybe it is learning to listen," he answered. They worked side by side until the light went pale. When they parted, they did so at the invisible line, still not stepping over. Helena woke before the city, a habit she had not needed to practice in years. Dawn came blue and narrow through the palace shutters. The garden waited, a hush before a concert. She tied her hair, slipped into her canvas jacket, and went straight to the pool to read the overnight data. Numbers, she trusted, would tell her whether their invisible line had held its own against curiosity. The readings were wrong, not catastrophically, but wrong in a way that set the back of her neck alive. Conductivity spikes at 3 in the morning, a temperature rise that made no environmental sense. 2 sensors offline as if embarrassed. She crouched, loosened the casing on one unit, and found the simplest of crimes. The cable was half pulled, not by accident but by a tidy hand. She called Chiara first, then security. "No alarm," she said, steady. "But someone tested the line before the city does." Raphael arrived as the light became a pale sheet. He moved with a quiet that told Helena he had gone from sleep to crisis, without passing through softness. She handed him the data on a clipboard that still smelled faintly of basil from the winter garden. "Someone wanted the numbers to lie," she said. "Or to be unprovable," he answered, reading fast. "We can rebuild the chain and harden the casings. Cameras with motion triggers. Discreet ones," she said. "The statues do not appreciate suspicion in their sightlines." He nodded, already texting the head of security. Within an hour, the sensors were back in place, better housed. The cable runs sleeved in conduit that might have withstood a small siege. Helena reset the baseline. Her hands did what they always did, small, precise acts. While her mind ran old corridors she would rather keep closed. São Paulo, a misplaced key, a file dragged to a hidden folder by someone she loved. She pressed her thumb to the cold edge of the nymph's jar. Not again, she told herself, and the stone. By afternoon, the palace was a living map of lists. Seating charts multiplied, calligraphed place cards curled under the weight of names. Deliveries came and went with the rhythm of tide. Raphael met with the mayor, the cultural secretary, and a sponsor whose smile had the elastic sheen of a billboard. The sponsor wanted the quartet louder. The mayor wanted a longer speech. Everyone wanted the garden to behave like a backdrop instead of a heart. In the small pocket of time between meetings, Raphael returned to the site. "We will treat the sabotage as competence," he said. "We noticed. We adapted. We are better. We will treat it as intent," Helena replied. "This was not clumsy, it was a message." "From whom?" "The list is short," she said, and did not elaborate. Names did not help the work. Rules did. Night came with rehearsals. The quartet took their mark on the floating platform. The lighting designer feathered illumination, so the marble breathed rather than glared. Guests of importance drifted in for a technical visit that was nothing of the sort. Lucas stood at the threshold with his crew, honoring the line like a pilgrim honors a relic. When he caught Helena's eye, he lifted his hand, part greeting, part apology. Halfway through the second movement, a soundless ripple moved through the hall. Helena felt it rather than heard it, that change in air when a crowd draws breath to do the wrong thing together. She looked toward the east door and saw it open. The sponsor, flanked by 3 admirers, stepped across the chalk. Not a leap, just a toe, then a shoe, then a laugh that said the rules were flattering suggestions, not law. Security moved, gentle and firm. The sponsor made a show of surprise. "Oh, is this forbidden ground?" His tone did the old dance. Smile in front, dare behind. Helena did not raise her voice. She walked to the line until they faced each other across it, the hall's murmurs pressing against their backs. "It is," she said, "for the safety of the works. And if we fund their safety generously," he said, still smiling, "does the line move?" Raphael arrived then, having heard the shift even before seeing it. He did not ask for context. He stood at Helena's side, just behind the line, and addressed the room rather than the man. "This garden belongs to the people of Santa Aurelia," he said, not loudly, but with a clarity that made people turn their heads the way they turn them toward the first note of a beloved song. "Tonight, we honor the work that returns it to them. The line on this floor is not a whim. It is the thin place between preservation and spectacle. If you choose to cross it, you are choosing spectacle. The palace will not choose with you." Silence followed, the honest kind. The sponsor's smile stalled, then softened into something almost human. He stepped back. Someone, Helena suspected Beatrice, started a small, precise applause that belonged to boundaries rather than to bravado. The quartet, bless them, did not stop playing. The room exhaled. The line lived. Later, after the last guest drifted out, after the last light was dimmed to the level of breathing, Helena checked the sensors again. Stable. The sabotage, whoever had attempted it, had been met by an answer that was not anger but proof. She closed her notebook and turned to find Raphael waiting, not so close as to startle, not so far as to require invitation. "Thank you for saying it that way," she said. "For saying which way? As if the law were not yours but ours." He looked at the line, at the statues, at her. "It is easier to be brave when you are right," he said. "You were right." "I only translated." She could have told him then that translation was its own art, that the city's appetite for theater was curbed only by speeches that knew how not to perform. Instead, she said, practical as ever, "Tomorrow we run the water." "The pumps are ready," he said. "I had them restored last month quietly." She smiled, surprised. "You anticipated me." "Only in plumbing," he said, and that was the closest he had come to teasing her. They walked the perimeter once more, a slow patrol that had less to do with fear than with faith. At the east gate, something snagged Helena's sleeve. She looked down, expecting a splinter. It was a thin wire, almost invisible in the low light, strung at ankle height to trip a careless foot into the gravel. She knelt, fingers steady, and traced it to a small hook set into the gatepost. She could feel Raphael's body still beside her, all attention. "Second message," she said, sloppier than the first. "Because the first failed," he said. Helena removed the wire, coiled it neatly, and slipped it into an evidence bag from her pocket. "I will not give them a scene," she said. "They want a scene. We will give them a report." He exhaled. "You are the bravest person in this palace," he said, matter of fact. "That is not true." She stood, brushing dust from her knees. "The bravest are the ones who choose not to cross." When they reached the winter garden, she paused at the lemon tree and did what she had done before, rolled a fruit between her fingers, feeling its cool, oily skin. He watched her with an attention that was not hunger and not disinterest, that particular middle place that had become the way he looked at her when no one else was looking. "Helena," he said. She turned. He did not touch her face or the convenient curve of her wrist. He took her hand, the one with a pale crescent of dust at the knuckle, and lifted it and pressed his mouth once to the space between the bones. Not a kiss snatched, but a vow spoken in a language made only of pressure and care. It lasted a heartbeat, perhaps two, long enough for the basil to mark the air, long enough for her to feel something slip almost audibly into place inside her chest. She did not pull back, she did not lean forward. She let the moment be exact, like a scalpel cut precisely on the line that will not scar. "Tomorrow we run the water," she repeated, because names mattered. "Tomorrow," he said, and let her hand go as if setting something on a pedestal. They parted at the invisible boundary they had drawn and redrawn, and both of them slept as if the garden itself had lent them its stone heart to rest on. On the morning of the reopening, the city was a single complicated bell. The harbor cranes looked like silent instruments at rest. The hills flashed white laundry. The air all but chimed with the gossip of what people would wear and whom they hoped to see. In the palace, time divided into tasks. The quartet tuned in the hall. The caterers whispered their lists like prayers. Security traced the line again with quiet, muscular patience. Helena arrived in work clothes, as if her body needed to be reminded that the day belonged first to labor. She checked the clamps, tapped the repaired support with the back of a fingernail, listened for the clean, intimate sound of integrity. The satyr was steady. The nymph's fissure was closed, not erased. The garden felt like a wound healed to a new shape. Raphael found her kneeling by the pool, sleeve rolled, hair escaping the strictness of its tie. He said nothing for a moment. There are silences that distract. This one steadied. "Are you ready?" he asked. "As ready as marble gets," she said, which is to say, ready, and forever being made ready. They walked to the pump room together. The machinery had the sturdy grace of old engineering, valves like cast iron flowers, a wheel that required human hands. Chiara joined them with a clipboard and a grin she rarely allowed herself in public. "We are running water today," she said, as if quoting a prophecy. Helena set her palm to the cool metal of the wheel. "If anything groans beyond normal, we pause," she said. "If the pool takes the flow unevenly, we pause. We are not racing anyone." "Except the clock of the city," Raphael said. "Then let the city learn patience," Helena said. She turned the wheel. The pipe gave a throat-first sound, not quite a cough, then the kind of hum that makes engineers smile. The first thread of water slipped into the pool, like a violin entering after a long rest. It spread and shimmered. The statues took it into their reflections like a blessing. Sensors showed what Helena's body already knew, stable, within tolerances, margins firm. She breathed out. In the courtyard, someone whooped, a sound that could only have come from Chiara, and then bit it back into professionalism. By afternoon, the palace was dressed. The winter garden was a bright lung of green. The great hall glowed as if it had its own internal sunrise. Guests began arriving in increments that felt carefully accidental. The mayor brought a speech. The sponsor brought a different smile. Beatrice arrived with a cane wrapped in a ribbon the color of lemons and found a chair where she could see everything without being seen. At the threshold to the marble garden, Raphael paused. He wore a dark suit whose simplicity was its only statement. He looked like himself, which is to say, like a man trying to do the job without borrowing glory from the work. He offered his arm to Helena without presumption. She looked at it, then at the line, then at his face. She took the arm, and the room recalibrated to this new geometry, two people moving as a single decision. The quartet began, soft as breath. Raphael spoke first, brief and exact. He thanked the people it is proper to thank and the people it is right to thank, which are rarely the same. He spoke the sentence that had carried them through the last week, about protagonists and noise, and then he stepped aside. Helena did not enjoy microphones, but this was not about enjoyment. She spoke about water over stone, about the right to age, about the invisibility of good work. She named her team. She named the anonymous sculptor, whose tenderness in the hands had taught her again where fragility lives. She did not say the word sabotage. She did not say perfectionism. She said responsibility, and the room listened the way the pool listens to a fountain, completely without leaning in so far it spills. There is always one misstep in an event that is too close to perfect. It came early, mercifully. A guest, eager, not malicious, lifted a phone to lean across the line for a better angle. Security did not need to move. The closest guests extended their own hands, gentle as the arc of a bow, and guided the arm back. A human current protected what tape could not. Helena felt the change take root. The garden had grown more guardians in an instant than a budget could buy in a year. After the speeches, the quartet played a piece Beatrice loved. The old sculptor closed her eyes and let the sound wash her knuckles. Water moved, reflections flickered. The statues, reintroduced to their element, seemed to remember they had been made not only to be looked at, but to look back. Lucas approached Helena during the intermission, camera at his side, not up. "I owe you a good headline," he said. "I owe the city a better one." "You owe the work the truth," she said, not unkind. "I'm learning to ask for that," he said, surprising himself. "Congratulations." He did not extend a hand. He bowed his head instead, a small, correct gesture that felt like repair. At dusk, the sky poured a diluted gold into the pool. The line glowed faintly underfoot. The last piece of the evening was not on any program. Helena took Raphael to the pump room again. "For the closure," she said. "The water will run tonight without us, but I want to hear it once more before the city takes this over." They stood among the valves. The palace felt as if it had inhaled and was holding the breath without strain. Helena touched the wheel with the back of her fingers. A lover's courtesy returned to metal. She looked at Raphael and saw that he was not looking at the machinery. He was looking at her with the same attention he had given the line on the floor, and the old texts in the library, and the financial reports he loathed and did anyway. A single attention, learned and offered. "I have something to confess," he said, and even the pipes seemed to pause to let him speak. "Make it practical," she said, because that was how she protected things that mattered. "I am practical enough to know that if I ask you to stay, you may run," he said. "So I will say this instead. The garden will need you in 6 months when the first maintenance cycle is due. I would like to make the contract now, and I would like to spend the time between now and then learning how to be someone beside you without moving the line you drew for yourself." She had not realized until that moment how ready the answer had been in her. "I do not want a life made of emergencies," she said. "I want one made of maintenance, of returns." "Then let us begin as we mean to go on," he said. They did not kiss. The palace was full of cameras. The world had too many eyes and not enough respect. He held out his hand as if offering a tool. She placed hers in it. They stood like that, looking at the wheel that would do what wheels do, which is to turn things that people cannot move alone. When they returned to the hall, the quartet took their final bow. Raphael guided Helena not to the center, where applause is a kind of spotlight, but to the edge, where applause becomes warmth. Beatrice tapped her cane twice on the stone, a benediction that sounded like punctuation. Outside, the city received its new old place. Couples took photographs from the line and did not cross it. Children pointed at the satyr's newly steady stance. An elderly man cried when he heard the water and did not apologize for it. Santa Aurelia, for one evening, remembered how to hold beauty without closing a fist around it. Later, when the guests had left and the staff were folding the day back into itself, Helena and Raphael returned to the winter garden. The lemons were green in the dusk. The basil had given the air its last sweetness. He reached for the fruit she always paused to touch and set it in her palm. "For when you miss the smell," he said. "I will not," she replied, "because I will be here." The words surprised them both by how easy they were to say. No ceremony, no trumpet, just an arrangement for water and stone, and two people who had learned that the bravest thing is not to cross a line, but to draw one together and keep it. They stood a while longer, not waiting for anything, only listening, the way one listens to a fountain after a city has gone quiet, until the garden's soft machinery folded into the night and the marble at last seemed to breathe.